Hi everyone, thanks for joining me on my job hunt journey. I'm a leader in tech in the Boston area and I've been laid off for about 3 months now. There was very little activity in the holiday months, but things started picking up in February. Today I'm going to talk about my experiences, lessons learned, good resources I used, and just my overall outlook on what's ahead. So if this is interesting to you, keep watching. So let's talk about the current landscape. Last time we talked, I wasn't getting a lot of traction at all on my applications. Thankfully, that's changed and I've actually been able to complete a couple of cycles. Now, the way I normally operate in an interview process is I speak with a lot of people and I get a lot of practice that way until I get really good at packaging my message, therefore ultimately getting the role that I'm going for. And that just hasn't been the case this time around because there's significantly less opportunities to talk to people and get that practice. It was interesting to see how I would come out of certain sessions and feel like I totally rocked it and did really well, and was really shocked to find out that the company chose not to move forward with me. And the inverse was also true. At times, I came out of conversations feeling like I didn't perform my best and was pleasantly surprised to hear that the company did want to move forward. And I think that is a really good testament to how ultimately we have less control over what people think of us and how they like us than how we would like to think we do. Another good thing is that I feel that the market is picking up for people leaders in tech. Now that people are picking up my applications and I'm getting traction on that, I feel more like if I perform really well and put my best foot forward and really package my messaging well, I should be able to get my next role. And I think that's very encouraging to me, makes me feel very optimistic. So let's talk about lessons learned. The first one is, don't pretend to know more than you know. And I've fallen into this trap a couple of times where in order to complete a story, if there was a gap in knowledge in a certain area, I tried to fabricate a piece of that puzzle to complete the story. And I find that people will pick up on this and they will consciously or unconsciously lose trust in what you're saying. And I find that the best way to move forward when you do know that there's a gap in knowledge there is to acknowledge it and say, I don't have experience dealing with that type of situation, but here's how I would be resourceful in figuring out how to fill that gap, and then highlight my current knowledge around that situation and highlight how I would add value in solving that type of problem. Second is that when asked about situations where you had conflict, try to stay away from situations where there was too much negativity. And I fell into this trap where I picked some really negative situations to talk about because I wanted to highlight how, in spite of a potentially toxic work environment or really negative emotions, I was able to lead a team to deliver and overcome those challenges. The problem is the interviewer is very likely going to hear about that negative context and they might fill in the blanks in their minds and start wondering what role you played in making that situation negative. So what I would do, instead of picking a really negative story to talk about conflict, I would be very objective in talking about a very clear and defined situation where you had some disagreements and you found common ground with a person or a group of people and you collaborated on a solution and you had positive outcomes. And if you notice how I structured that, I used the STAR model. The STAR model is a method of answering questions, and it's an acronym for situation, task, action, results. So that's how you're going to structure your answer. For the S, you talk about the situation. You give the interviewer context for what led you to a problem. Task, where you briefly talk about what your responsibility was around completing that task. Action is where you talk about the steps you took to solve that problem. You talk about strategy and tactics and your direct role in solving that problem. And results is where you use as many metrics as possible and overall talk about the impact that your actions had on the solution of the problem. Next is, I found that sometimes people will ask you a question and are not so interested in a specific linear example, but they're interested in figuring out your thought process. And it's important for us to identify when that is the case. One example where I was asked this, my interviewer asked, let's say you're building a new application that's going to go to production. Walk me through 5 tools that you would use to complete this task. And what I did was start right away listing off from start to finish what I would do for the UI, what I would do for the microservices, the deployments, and in retrospecting about how I answered this question, something clicked. And what I believe is that he was looking for a collaborative approach to answering this question, right? Because he gave me a very vague, open-ended question. And the way I should have answered that was by firstly asking a lot of questions, because that was going to determine what tools I was gonna pick, right? It's kind of nuanced. It's not always super easy to figure out that that's what they're looking for, unless you're very specifically pulled into a systems design conversation, right? Like you come in knowing that this is the formula. You're gonna come in, they're gonna give you requirements, you're gonna refine the requirements further, ask a lot of questions, diagram things out, and talk about building out the system. I feel like people are very prepared to go into those sessions knowing what to expect. And sometimes interviewers do that outside of a systems design session. And this is very specific to tech interviews and might not apply to you if you're applying to a role outside of tech. Just a little disclaimer. One thing that I went through, and I really don't know how to get around, is the negative impact of taking a call while you're sick is real. I don't think I would refuse a call or ask to reschedule because I'm sick, especially in a remote environment. If I were required to go into a physical office, I would be mindful and respectful of people's health, right? I wouldn't willingly go in and get people sick just to get a job. But it's a lot easier to say, oh, I'll push through while I'm sick and just talk to these people and then go take a nap once I'm done. But people can pick up on the fact that you're physically ill. It's not a very pleasant situation to be in. And I do find that the calls that I took where I looked like that, I had a more negative outcome. I have found that, especially in leadership, if people are looking for a strong, trustworthy leader, if the first impression they have of you is that you're sick, that gives them an impression that you might be weak. And that's just not a trait that people are looking for in a leader. Unfortunately, I think that's just one of those unconscious biases that you have to get over. Yeah, I don't know what the resolution to that is. If you feel bold enough to ask to reschedule if you're sick, I very much admire that boldness. It's not something I would feel empowered to do at this time. A little bit of a health tangent. I had gotten a very good grasp on my immunity, and I had been taking vitamin C and zinc daily, and that was really helping me really not get sick as my kids were bringing a lot of germs home. And I did find that these past months of January and February, where there's less sunlight, just those immunity supplements were not cutting it. So I just recently started taking vitamin D and forcing myself to go on sun walks, where I just go out and try to get some sun exposure to absorb that vitamin D. And I have found that that has really helped me, not just with my immunity, but also my overall mood, health, and overall disposition and energy. So a little bit of a tangent, but I figured if this helps somebody, it helps somebody. So let's talk about resources. And the first one I've talked to you already about. They're called Leopard. And the first thing they do is act as a traditional recruiting company that connects employers to employees and vice versa. However, there's so much more than that. They're a community for women and non-binary people to really connect and be really well informed about their job hunt journey. So they provide things like study groups, remote study sessions, where people practice coding interviews. They will practice system design interviews. They have channels where people will share their experiences with certain companies, whether they're within the Leopard network or not. It serves women and non-binary people within the whole tech industry. They've been of great value to me. They also offer career coaching, and this is where I've found a career coach with whom I've been having sessions lately, and they have helped me understand what drives me to be passionate about tech and what has in some ways disillusioned me in the industry. This person has helped me craft my message and package myself. It's a mix of what they call career therapy, but also gets into the more technical side of things. So it's something that I really need at this stage of my career, and I'm really grateful that I've found it there. Another thing I did was go to a networking event. This was a Boston event for leaders in tech. So it was very targeted toward people like me, and I met some really inspiring people, and we had some great conversations about the industry. And we specifically talked about performance reviews, adjustments, and how to advocate for promotions. So it was really good networking. I met some great people. It also put into perspective what the current landscape is for hiring in Boston for the tech industry. It just sounds like a lot of companies right now are not hiring in my area. So it helped me understand why. It was insightful. As part of this process, I've done some more networking, and I reached out to a few people and I had conversations with them. And speaking with these people that I've worked with in the past helps me get out of that imposter complex funk. And it was a great experience because they volunteered memories that they had of me, and they were so positive and heartfelt, and they were circumstances that I had forgotten I had gone through, and really to put things into perspective and helped me understand why I am where I am and how deserving I am of how far I've come. It was helpful. Another resource I used, I don't know if I'm going to actually post this. I feel like it might be controversial, and I'm not sure why I feel that way, but I did apply for unemployment, and this is a Massachusetts service. I'm sure it's different in different parts of the country, but I was granted 26 weeks. I stopped being eligible when I find a job. You have to perform 3 job search related activities within that week, and that makes me feel like it's pretty open-ended. Like, it could be applying for a role. It could also mean partaking in an interview that week, I'm trying to make myself apply to a lot of options anyway. So even if I am going through interviews, I don't count those as activities. I will religiously apply to 3 new opportunities that week. Log it, you need certain information, a link to the job posting, the date you applied, name of the employer, etc. And yeah, I've been able to collect that way. I wanted to talk about this because it's a resource that can be available to you, and it can be really helpful if you're looking to fill that gap while you're looking for your next income stream. So if you're feeling any shame in considering doing this, I'm doing it. So we can let go of that shame together. And let's talk about my general outlook on what's to come. I feel like it's overall positive. I'm feeling optimistic. There are days where I feel like I'm really enjoying the process. I'm learning, growing, and I have a lot of flexibility and freedom with what I do with my time. And then there are other times after some rejection where I feel really down on myself and I feel like maybe I should be doing something else with my life, and maybe I'm not good enough, and all of those mental traps that we fall into. But overall, it's been an enjoyable time for me. And I know this about myself. It's always been a long process to interview and get to my next role. The difference now is that I don't have a current job, so it just feels a little more shaky ground. Knowing this about myself helps visualize the next step, which is, after a long drawn out process, getting that role in the end, and that brings me hope. And I'm using this time to retrospect and understand where I performed well, where I could have done better. I feel like I'm learning, getting more practice, and I'm having more time to work on independent projects such as this. There's other stuff I'm working on as well. I don't know if you've watched my first or second video, but I've started back up on my game dev project, and I'm really excited about that. That's also going to be another video I'll be making soon. I'll be hopefully recording a little bit of my dev process there. It's a really exciting project for me. I hope that these experiences help you navigate your own job hunt journey if that's something you're going through. I appreciate you coming to watch this video. I hope this helps, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great one.